Very good. All right. So we're just getting ready to do our, gosh, I wonder what number this is, Kelsey, of how many webinars we've done. It's been,
Ooh,
we ought to get I bet we're over 25 by now.
I think so. I think so. We've probably been doing this for just about 2 years.
Yep. It's been great. We started this as sort of a way to amuse ourselves and each other and other kindred spirits during the pandemic, and it's turned out to be a wonderful way to spend an hour on a Saturday afternoon. For most of us, it's afternoon. Some of us, it's morning. Some of us are in other countries besides the United States, and it could be evening time. It could be supper time, right? But that's the beauty of Zoom and the internet, where we can all be together for this 1 hour no matter where we are. So welcome, everyone. We have a few more still signing in, but while we do the sign-ins, Kelsey, do you want to say a little bit about our organization, Weave a Real Peace, before we get started?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Thank you, Judy. So I'm going to just quickly share my screen and pull up the Weave a Real Peace website. So I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today and welcome. If you're new to Weave a Real Peace, then I just want to share a couple of our resources on our website with you. I'm Kelsey Wiskirchen. I am WARP's Executive Director. And so our website is weavearealpeace.org. And I wanted to share that if you go to our homepage, under this first events tab, you will see all of our scheduled upcoming events. This panel discussion today is, as Judy said, it's a monthly series. So we have a different topic with 3 presenters each month. So you can see our upcoming events there. And if you have missed any of our previous events, under the previous events tab, you can see the recordings and the program descriptions for all of our former programs. So we invite you to check that out and share the programs with anyone you think would be interested. Under news, we have a quarterly newsletter and a monthly blog. And so in a couple of weeks, we will have a blog post related to today's program. The blog is usually tied in with the monthly panel discussion. So, and then one other resource I want to share that is a new resource, we have a member publications link under community, which was it's just gone live in the last couple of weeks. And if you click on this link, it will pull up all of the books that have been written by WARP members. So it's a really wonderful resource for many, many textile related publications. And then if you would like to know more about WARP and a membership, there's a membership tab, and you are welcome to contact me with any questions. I'll put my email address into the chat. So thank you all for being here today. And Judy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Kelsey. So today's program is unusual in that it features fiber artists, artisans, and fiber activists, all based in the United States. And what our panelists all have in common is they're working on projects to have a more sustainable fiber system in our country. If any of you have ever traveled and tried to buy local wool or cotton or flax or linen or other kinds of fibers that we're used to buying in the fabric store or at your favorite yarn shop, you'll know that it's very hard to find things from the local area. And all of us share, all your panelists today, including your moderator, which is me, Judy Jetson, are members of Fibershed organizations as well. And that's one of the ways we learn from each other. We share frustrations with each other, and we help advance the cause of a more sustainable fiber system in our country and in our local communities. So the first presenters I want to introduce you to today are sisters, Jess and Sarah, and they co-founded the Rust Belt Fibershed and they work with fiber farmers, processors, and designers in what they define as the Rust Belt region, the center of which I assume is Cleveland. Is that right? Okay. Our second presenter today is going to be Erin Miller. She's from the Mountains and Plains Fibershed, and she's based in the Denver, Colorado area. And our third, our cleanup batter today of the three presentations is going to be Rebecca Burgess, who is from the Northern California Fibershed. So what we'll do in terms of our format is Jess and Sarah will talk about their Fibershed and some of their sustainable fiber practices that they're advocating for and helping to implement. They'll talk for about 10 minutes. If you have questions specifically about things they've said, things that aren't clear, type them into the chat and I'll interrupt and ask those questions. If the questions are more general, things that all of our panelists might answer, I will hold those till the end because each panelist has about 10 minutes to present, and then we'll have discussion, questions and answers afterwards. And usually these programs will be over right around an hour after they start. Sometimes we go a little bit over, but I'd rather leave you wanting more than snoozing off. So we keep it short and sweet, and you'll have contact information for everyone should you want to follow up with them and ask questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jess and Sarah. You have the floor.
Thanks. Let me just share my screen here. We'll get ourselves situated. Can everybody see the screen? Thumbs up. Great. Okay. Jess is going to kick us off. Hi, everyone. I'm Jess Boeke. This is my sister, twin sister, Sarah. We're the co-founders of Rust Belt Fibershed. And we are coming to you from that center of that red dot there on your screen, from our fiber shed, the Rust Belt Fibershed. And we are honored to have been invited to share with you just a little bit about the way that Rust Belt Fibershed is looking at sustainability in textiles. And while we have several projects happening right now, and you can see kind of like the list of those if you were to head to our website, we're going to start just by sharing a minute or two about one specific project that we've been engaged in for 4 years now, which is growing local flax for linen. And then we'll spend the bulk of the short 10 minutes talking about the frame of sustainability that we have for this project and for our other projects as well. Cool. Okay, so we started growing flax, and this is flax for linen production, back in 2019 as a one-plot community grow at a farm called Freydot Farm, which this whole project was partially funded by a micro grant from Fibershed. So thank you so much, Fibershed, for that. And that was a big year. We kicked off the Cleveland Flax Project. We had community days where everyone from the community came out for composting, and then those same people came back out again for the seeding, and then for the harvesting, and then for the processing, all at this one central farm. And we made a short video out of it, so you can kind of find out a little bit more about that on our website. But we were encouraged to do this because there is no real linen production in the United States. And so we knew that this was something that we needed to kind of, really focus on. And so the next year, despite the pandemic, we wanted to keep the momentum going. So we planted about 1/10 of an acre on one plot with community volunteers using the same seed variety, and that's the Natalie seed. And then in 2021, partially out of the pandemic, but also out of a desire to bring in more people, this year we shifted to a decentralized community grow. So we were mainly using this for seed trials, since we had no infrastructure built yet for processing the flax into linen. And 18 plots grew flax that year with the Lenore seed out of Fiber Revolution in Oregon. So we had this decentralized system with all of these different growers all over our fiber shed, all trying to see, kind of recording the height of their flax and, what seed varieties were working, and was the Lenore seed producing the same as the Natalie variety from the year before, and all of that, and then also saving seed. And then so this year, we expanded that even more without really any real advertising at all. We grew 100 pounds of Lenore seed on 32 community plots throughout our fiber shed. And we upped the ante of the data collection a little bit, partnering with local universities to help us collect and process that data, and very fine data points that will be able to really drive our motion and what we do next year for that. And it seems like 4 years is a long time, right? Like it's taken so long. And that's partly due to funding, partly due to revitalizing an industry from scratch. Since there is, like I said earlier, no infrastructure here at all. And by here, I mean in the United States for processing linen. You cannot go out to your local store and buy local linen yardage. I mean, USA grown and made and processed linen yardage. It just is not a thing. And so that's why we're taking so much time to work through this and to grow, and even probably most importantly, to iterate on these different processes every season. And because it's given us time to apply this frame that Sarah is going to be talking about. So these 4 years have really helped us apply a framework that Sarah will share with you now. Yeah, hi everyone. So we thought it would be wise to take our brief time here to share some guiding thinking from a book called Sand Talk, How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World, and share how a frame from this book applies to our flax project. And maybe that will be helpful for any projects that you're interested in as well. So if you aren't familiar with Tyson Yunkaporta, he's the author of Sand Talk. He's also an academic, an arts critic, a researcher. He belongs to the Appalachian Clan in Queensland, Australia, and he works as a senior lecturer in Indigenous knowledges. And throughout the book, he uses what he calls yarns, which are discussions with others. That's how he frames his chapters. And in the final chapter, he's describing a yarn that he had with a respected Gundagari elder of the Murawari Nation by the name of Doris Shillingsworth. Both of their names are up here. And I will be reading a short excerpt from that in just a second, because they could say it so much better than I could paraphrase it. But I'd be remiss if I also didn't mention Ian Sanderson here, who is a member of Mohawk Nation Turtle Clan. And I don't know if anybody else out there has a habit of purchasing books. I'm not talking about reading books, I'm just talking about just purchasing them. I do. And I mentioned Ian here because this book had been sitting on my shelf for a year, and this book here, and I was nudged to read it when I had Ian as a guest on a podcast we do about education called Regenerative Ed. And well, I say that he nudged me, but actually it's more like he super strongly suggested that I read this, and even that I make it the cornerstone of some of the work that we're doing related to sustainable or regenerative systems. So really appreciative to Ian for that. So the passage I'm about to read to you shares how in our modern Western culture, we use a pathway of direct, reflect, connect, and respect. And that's sort of the way that we impose things, that we do things. And I'm going to read just a few short paragraphs here to share how both Tyson Yunkaporta and Doris Shillingsworth, he's in conversation with her, so he'll refer to her as Mama Shillingsworth, thought about flipping that. So here I go. Mama Doris had observed interventions and programs imposed on her community for over half a century, noticing that they always begin with the last step, direct. And here I put it in the first step because this is the way that we do it in modern Western culture. Government agents come into the community with a plan for change, and they direct activities towards this change immediately. When it all fails, they go backwards to the next step, reflect. They gather data and measure outcomes and try to figure out what went wrong. Then they realize they didn't form the relationships with the community, so belatedly, they go to the next step, connect. Through these relationships, they discover the final step, which should have been the first, finding a profound respect for members of the community they ruined. They cry as they say farewell and return to the city calling, "Thank you, I have learned so much from you." Well, if you invert that process, you'll have something approximating an appropriate way of coming to Indigenous knowledge and working towards sustainable solutions. So the first step here of respect is aligned with the values and protocols of introduction, setting rules and boundaries. This is the work of your spirit, your gut. The second step, connect, is about establishing strong relationships and routines in exchange that are equal for all involved. Your way of being is your way of relating, because all things only exist in relationship to each other. This is the work of your heart. The third step, reflect, is about thinking as part of the group and collectively establishing a shared body of knowledge to inform what you will do. This is the work of the head. And then the final step, direct, is about acting on that shared knowledge in ways that are negotiated by all. This is the work of the hands. Respect, connect, reflect, direct, in that order. So I read that to you because it's so much more well said than I could have said it. And it's really been something that, like Jess was saying, we're lucky to have had such a short period of time in thinking about, or I mean, a long period of time, several years, in thinking about flax, so that we don't just directly start to implement a large scale process. We actually feel fortunate. So what I'm going to do now, in the brief time that I have left, is go through a series of questions that we created based on each one of these and how they relate to our flax project. And perhaps that could be something that could be helpful for you if you're thinking about a project of your own, or you're thinking about sustainable solutions in the textile world. And so obviously each one of these questions that I'm going to put up, you could spend hours talking about them. I have about a minute and a half left. So you can screenshot this if you want, but just I'll take you through it briefly. So the first one, respect. Some questions here. What are our values? How do they align with what people need and place need? Is growing flax a way to serve that alignment? What will we say no to stay in a place of respect? So here briefly, we had to really think about what our values are. One of our main values, the main thing that we're going for, is regeneration. And to that means more life, more thriving. That's things like more joy, more connectedness, like living systems thriving, basically. And so how does that align with growing flax? Well, if we think about how it aligns with growing cotton in our region, it really doesn't, because cotton is not meant to be in this region. It's not the right climate for it. It's not the right place for it. We would need to put in a whole lot of inputs. Flax, on the other hand, aligns to that because flax does not require all the pesticides and the watering and stuff, and it grows fairly well here, particularly along the microclimate of our lake. And we also had to think about what we're going to say no to stay in a place of respect. So if someone were to come in and say, I want to grow how many ever major acres of flax, I want to do it in a way that is extractive from the land. Of course, they wouldn't use that terminology, but ways where maybe people aren't making fair wages, or we're using too many pesticides, or we're using this or that. We are clear about our respect and our boundaries, and so that's when we know to say no. So this helps us think about what is sustainable based on Tyson Yunkaporta's definition of sustainability there. Connect. So how are we building up relationships, not just separate entities of things? We're not just looking at the farmer. We're not just looking at the designer. Our job in the fiber shed is connect all of those pieces and build up the connections between those. So making sure that there are routines of strong exchange. There's questions here like, what is the reciprocity for our growers of, for the earth, for the community? And how can I make those relational practices into routine so they don't get lost in the hubbub of the extractive industrial complex? Because once you start that train moving, right, it can be easy to forget that we're here to connect. The next question, or the next point, is reflect. So how might we check what we've learned so far with the community, and what structures can I create to share that knowledge, to pause? How can I create small enough feedback loops that allow for quicker iteration for pausing? This has been particularly helpful with flax, because what we've been able to do is have these really small feedback loops, because we're working in small pockets. And so we're able to reflect. First, we respected, now we're connecting with everybody and trying to figure out what are those relationships there. And now we have the opportunity to reflect back on some of the data that we've collected, because we're doing it in small enough iterations with people so that we can actually, we can collect that data. We've also set up some structures and routines using a platform called Circle, which is sort of like Slack or a Facebook community, to be able to do that sort of reflecting and creating that established body of shared knowledge, right? So not just one person is the knowledge holder, the knowledge keeper. And then eventually we will direct. So based on what we've learned, based on all these steps, we can say, okay, here's how we want to move forward in a larger scale way. And we always have to double check, who has a voice in this process, and then think about what steps we can take. We thought this was so helpful for us as a frame of thinking about sustainability different, and we thought that it might be a good use of time to share it with you. So our Instagram is Rust Belt Fibershed, our email rustbeltfibershed@gmail.com. Our website is rustbeltfibershed.com. We talked a lot about the flax project today, but we're always looking to connect with folks about animal fiber, waste wool, other solutions for regenerative farming, textiles. We love giving talks, so please feel free to reach out, and we'll take any questions, I guess, at the end or whenever.
Yes, that was wonderful. And I do want to, one of the commenters said, please, if possible, talk just a little bit slower. But is now that's the end of your presentation. But look, did remind me to mention that this presentation will be recorded. It's being recorded. It'll be available on YouTube. So if you want to listen to it, you might even be able to slow the speed down a little bit, and you'll get all the words.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
You could that. Sorry if that wasn't clear.
That's fine. That you were fine. Some of our ears are just slower than others. There was also comment of someone involved with Chico flax mentioning that this is going on in other parts of the country, and someone also noted she had been to a presentation about Lithuanian textile production. So maybe when we get to the question and answer period, I think what I'd like to do is take that question and pose it to all our panelists, which is, what kind of research did you do before you got into this? Because I think that's where a lot of us come up with ideas, but we're not really sure how to start. And everyone in Fibershed groups has started something, so I think it'll be interesting to share that maybe in the Q&A period. But at this point, we're going to go on to Erin. And Erin is a board member of the Mountains and Plains Fibershed in Colorado, co-founder of Nerdy Sheep Fiberworks, and they work with Colorado-based makers and promote yarn without added chemicals. So Erin, let's hear your story.
Hi, everybody. Let me just get my screen share up. I'm thinking it's working the way I want it to. Everybody see it? Okay. Should be up and going. Awesome. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Miller. As it was said, I'm the president of the Colorado Mountain and Plain Fibershed, as well as the co-owner of Nerdy Sheep Fiberworks. I got into college. I got into fiber back in college. I needed a de-stressor. It was, a busy time. Everyone's busy during college. So I started knitting, and then it moved on to spinning, and then it moved on to weaving, and, so on and so forth. And now I shear sheep, and eventually I'll own sheep. So Nerdy Sheep Fiberworks kind of came out of a business I had started when I was out of business back in college, right after college. It was kind of hard to find jobs. It was 2008. It was, and until now, it became Nerdy Sheep Fiberworks and was incorporated in 2022 with my business partner, Sarah, and I. And we're kind of a new startup. There's some difficulties, which we'll talk about later on. But the things that are most important to us in our business are using natural fibers from local and regional sources. So we're based in Colorado. We have fiber that we've purchased from local farms around here. We work with a mill up in Wyoming, a mill in Nebraska, one here in Colorado. There's just never enough mills. We also are natural dyers. So we do naturally dyed yarn, naturally dyed organic cotton that we do our best to source, but we use eco-friendly and sustainable processes doing all of these things. So everything's biodegradable, everything's done water-wise, and, being aware of, our lack of water here, because it's kind of hard to do things when you just don't have nearly enough water to do what you're looking to do all the time. We're also certified sheep shearers. That came out of talking with farmers here. And just determining that there really aren't enough sheep shearers. So I picked up and signed up for the class, and then Sarah signed up for the class without telling me, and surprised me as, hey, by the way, we're going to become sheep shearers together. I was like, no way, this is awesome. So we went out and we became sheep shearers. We do, that's us. Super fun. We're climbing partners first, and we decided, I've been a fiber artist for 20 something years, and Sarah was in business and entrepreneurship. She worked for the Jake Jabs entrepreneurship at CU Denver for a long time. So she's just got all of this business knowledge that I don't have. So taking and combining us has been really just awesome for building a business with somebody. We picked up sheep shearing, as I said before, and we're both ASI certified, which is the American Sheep Industry. They focus on humane handling of the animals. Some sheep, some of the larger farm organized like operations, they're just get the sheep done as fast as possible. They've got a ton of people on the floor. They're just shearing in 5 or 6 minutes. And it's just get the sheep, get it done, get it out. Get the sheep, get it done, get it out. Where we're on the smaller end of things, it's Sarah and I, and we go to small farms along the Front Range in Colorado, and we shear people's personal pet herds or fiber herds, or, you know, things like that. And whoever needs their sheep sheared, really. I mean, llamas, we haven't gotten into alpacas yet. That's a whole nother literally animal, and shearing them is a whole different animal. So that has been actually quite a large part of our business in the last year. And it's really important to make it accessible for the farmers here and have them have somewhere for their materials to go. So that's been a blast. Oh, come on, screen. Now it won't move. Our 3-year goal. This is important. We are going to be building a fiber mill to add to the overly taxed fiber mills that we already have here. There's only 2 in the state of Colorado right now. And there's 1 in Nebraska, 1 in Wyoming, and 1 in Utah that we know of, that we've been working with, but there's just not enough to give these small farmers the ability to get their fiber processed. The wait time at most of these mills can be anywhere between 4 months to like a year. So we're trying to alleviate some of the stress, but also build a community around it. Working with natural animal fibers from small farms. Somebody wants to have their stuff made into yarn, or eventually have it woven into fabric or a rug or something. We'll be able to do those things for our customers. We're hoping to build in a rural, excuse me, a rural location so that we can also include having jobs in rural communities. It's very difficult for jobs in those communities. But I mean, eventually, hopefully someday, this is a pipe dream here, but be able to include hemp as one of our products that we can offer. That's a pipe dream. We'll see where that goes, but I would love to have that as part of it. One of the biggest things that comes with a small fiber startup is challenges, especially sustainable fiber startup, is sourcing materials. Wool has been an easy one to source because there are a lot of small farms that they just don't want their fleeces. They don't know what to do with them. There has been no stream for them to go into. So we are having an easier time getting wool than we are, for example, organic cotton. That's been one of the hardest ones here in Colorado. We don't grow it. There is nobody here raising it or milling it, but there are places in the United States, at least, that are producing cotton and cotton textiles from American grown cotton and organic cottons, which that's helpful, but they're not making all of the items. So sometimes we have to go out to like India or something, which I'd prefer not to. It's just the cost of some of these things is just been prohibitive for a small startup. But at least if we're ordering from India, we make sure that it's GOTS certified. We check into the place that it's come from. So we know what we're getting and where it's coming from before we use it. Other things have been pricing and the fact that things are handmade. So it takes time to make things. And we have a smaller market. Our smaller market is, it's not accessible to all. There are less people that can afford the handmade items. And that's been kind of trying to get the right balance of what we have to what people can afford has been interesting. And finding the right events to bring our stuff to currently has been interesting. Farmers markets, it's really good at the beginning, but towards the end, people are just, they're not interested at a certain point. So that's been interesting. And then lastly, workspace. Workspace is huge. We have no workspace. We've outgrown my basement that I'm in right now. It's stuffed to the gills with looms and spinning wheels and yarn. It's everywhere. And it's spilled out into the other room. So it's just taken over. And that has been, you know, a lot of interesting changes with working in a sustainable fiber business as opposed to just buying stuff wherever. It's been interesting. And lastly, we're both part of Mountains and Plains Fibershed. We are the new, we're transitioning to a new team. The Fibershed originally popped up in about 2015, run by a whole wonderful set of ladies, but COVID kind of caused that to go to a screeching halt. And we ended up taking over this year. As in like probably about a month ago. So we're still brand new. We're rebuilding. We've adjusted our geographical region to include lower Wyoming because there's no mill there. And there's so many farmers that want to do stuff with their wool. So there's no fiber shed. They're looking to get in on Fibershed. And where we are, it's not even 200 miles up to there. So it's very close to where we are. So we got a big 200-mile circle. And then there's another Fibershed in southern Colorado on the western slope. So we've got a lot of ideas and plans surrounding that, but we're still kind of trying to get our feet underneath us there. That's been interesting. So I'm looking forward to working with some of you all in other fiber sheds to get some ideas. That'd be great. The last bit is just, we have a website. We sell our naturally dyed yarns that are local to Colorado. They're locally sourced. They're, they're spun at local mills and then dyed by us. We also have like our dryer balls that are made out of locally sourced wool, sorry, that was milled right here in Colorado or in Nebraska, one of the two mills that we use. We're currently expanding our store and hoping to build our workshop so we can actually include teaching classes in order to teach people to spin or to weave or to learn how to like make their own fiber products instead of having it be like cost prohibitive because somebody else made it. It's nice to learn how to do it yourself too, because some people just have that desire to make things and they just don't think they can. So it's nice to teach people. So yeah, that's about what I have to say. This was my first time doing this, so hopefully I didn't speak too fast or was too wacky. So hopefully that was all right.
Thanks, Erin. That was great. And there are lots of people who've offered suggestions, interestingly, in the chat. So there are members in our audience today, and we've got about 100 people with us that have ideas for you about places you could go or groups you could partner with. And I think the comment I want to make, having been involved with an organization with similar goals for about 12 years is there's always this sort of startup, and you have to see where the energy is going to come from in order to see how your group's going to evolve. There's no straight path to sustainability here, but we all start with the values, and then we figure out how we can do it from here. Kelsey, I don't think our third speaker has turned up, has she? Has
No,
Rebecca signed in?
I'm watching for her, and I don't think she's joined us.
All right, so obviously something must have happened because she was with us for the rehearsal, and I knew she was looking forward to being with the group today. But I'm going to do a very short pinch hit here for Rebecca, because there was one thing she was going to talk about that I'd really like to cover. I was looking for it on my screen, which hopefully I can share. Let's give it a try. We thought it would be useful to come up with, to share a definition of sustainability with everyone, because it means different things to different people. And this is not exactly the definition that Rebecca used, but it's a word that's bandied about a lot these days. So I thought I'd put this out there. So the first one is it's the ability to be maintained at a certain level. So a growth that's sustainable, or a material that's sustainable is something that this definition over on the right-hand side of my screen says, a much broader definition that aims for humans to safely coexist on planet Earth over a long time. It also mentions that it's been difficult for us to agree on sustainability. But I think another piece of what's a sustainable fiber organization or a sustainable textile system is one that does no harm to the environment, or, you know, it tries to do more good than harm, maybe would be another way to say it. Each one of us has different ideas about that in our Fibershed organizations, but I think that's really one of the key elements. The group that I'm the chairman of is called Local Cloth, and we're the Blue Ridge Mountain Fibershed. We're headquartered in Asheville, North Carolina, and have a radius of about 100 miles around that, which was about as far as people are willing to drive. That's how we defined our region. I'm not sure how the others did, but we said, well, people will drive about 2 hours to go somewhere. So that's kind of how we set it. Our organization was formed to help improve the economy of textiles in the region and people that worked in that area, not in the mills so much as we focus on individual farmers and fiber artists. So we're trying to find ways for them to make a decent living in this region, practicing what they're here to practice. We've done that through a whole series of events and activities. We started off doing exhibits and fashion shows so that people could see there was fiber being produced in this region, and it was being made into beautiful things by artists. We did fashion shows to show that you could make things from local fiber and they could be beautiful. Then we started offering classes, which for us have been a really important component of how local cloth is involved in this region. Our classes are mostly half-day and one-day workshops where fiber artists or farmers teach others. We're in the midst of 3 well-known craft schools, so we don't compete with them, but we allow people who are teaching there to supplement their classes with smaller classes in our community, and that's worked out pretty well. About a year ago, we started a retail shop in Asheville, and we moved our studio to the River Arts District, so we now have classes and a shop where farmers and artists can sell their products. So there's a lot of activity. We've got about 300 members. We have a big board that's a working board, and have different events like an Anything Fiber sale once a year where people can get rid of all their surplus stuff and buy more from somebody else. We also have Fiber Farmers Day that's been going on for 11 years. And that's one where farmers bring fleece, raw fleece, and sell them. Sometimes yarn and farm products, but primarily fleece to hand spinners. We have a lot of hand spinners in the region. So all that said, the one project I want to talk to you about today is our Blue Ridge Blankets project, which we started not quite a year ago. And I have just an Instagram post that I'll share with you. So you can see, we just got our samples back. So I want to show you that slide. Just went up, I think, yesterday. Let me come back to you. No. Don't you love these multiple screen things? Okay, here we go. I've been saying for quite some time that it was time for local cloth to grow into its name. And the Blue Ridge Blankets project is aiming to do just that. This is really our experiment in sustainable textiles. We purchased all of the fleece from sheep farmers, alpaca farmers, and Angora goat farmers in our region in that 100-mile radius. We personally skirted most of it, and I want to talk to Erin especially. Shearers should make sure somebody in the room is skirting that fleece, because we're never going to be able to grow robust local textile projects unless somebody does that job, because the mills won't do it. Farmers don't want to do it. So I'm just saying, I had to train a team of skirters in order to do this project. But anyhow, that's just one of the little nitty-gritty details of what happens when you get involved in these things. We had this yarn or wool processed into yarn at a mill that's within our fiber shed. It's called Two Roots Mill. And as Erin mentioned, we've discovered that it's very difficult to find any mills that can process your fiber in less than a year. There have been a lot of mills in our part of the country closed down over the last few years, and the demand is going up. So it's become quite a challenge, at least for wool and animal fibers. But we got about 50 pounds of our yarn our wool fiber made into yarn. Then it was about a third of it was dyed with natural dye. We have a natural dye study group that's part of Local Cloth. And so they took it on it took them about 6 weeks to dye the yarn for us in 8 different shades. Then it went to students at Warren Wilson College and Haywood Community College who were in the weaving programs, and they wove us about, I think we've got 13 sample blankets so far and about 6 more to come back in. But the samples you can see here in the slide are ones made by the students at Warren Wilson College using the natural dyed yarn. And we're very proud of these. We just got them in last week. We're just planning a party probably next Sunday to celebrate, because I don't know about the rest of you, but we're always so busy when we're getting a project going. We get one phase done, we're like, oh, phew, that's done. Let's go on to the next one. But I think it's really important to stop and celebrate your successes. And having our samples done is a big success for us. This one was dyed with madder. So is that. We have some really pretty ones with madder. Here's a plaid. And I think back at the beginning, you can see this multicolored stripe. That's all the different colors of natural dye we had, except for the green. And then, of course, there are several that were dyed in indigo, which I think are turning out so far to be everyone's favorite. Our next phase is to do larger production runs of these blankets, and we have to narrow down the number of patterns and designs just to make it economically feasible. So we're going to be showing them at various locations to get input from potential buyers from general consumers, and also to raise awareness of the project. They're going to be on exhibit at the Southern Highland Craft Guild's annual fall festival in Asheville, mid-October. Also at the Southeast Animal Fiber Fair, which is sort of our version of Maryland Sheep and Wool, or the Dutchess County Fiber Festival, if some of you are familiar with that. We're going to have people vote. We're going to name each of these patterns and then have ballots and let people vote for their favorites. I'm going to have people's choice will probably determine which one's going to production. We're also going to be using mills outside of our region, I'm sorry to say, to produce them, because the local mill that did our samples can only do 25 pounds a week. And if we sent her 200 pounds of fiber, nobody else would have a turn. So we had to ship them out of state, which is kind of sad, but we're doing as much in our region as we can and hoping we get additional mills online before we do this again next year. So Kelsey, I hope that was an interesting fill-in for you. I'm sorry you didn't get Rebecca, but you got to see
that was
something
perfect.
else.
Yeah, that was perfect. And it's so nice to see how the project has come full circle. We're getting to hear the story at a really wonderful time in the timeline of all the work that you've done on that. So thank you, Judy, for sharing that.
Sure. Okay, so now we're going to move to the Q&A. I'm going to go back through some of these. Somebody asked, what is skirting? Skirting means taking off the short bits and the bits that are so full of hay or burrs or other things that they couldn't possibly be processed by a mill. And sometimes you can do that, like if you're doing alpaca, you can almost just shake it and most of that will come out. In fact, I know a few alpaca farmers that have tumbling machines that look like mini concrete mixers, and that tumbles, it has a screen at the bottom and the little bits of dirt and shorts tumble out. There's also a tumbler like that we used when we skirted the mohair up at the farm that raises Angora goats. It literally was a concrete mixer that somebody had modified for her that turned around. And I have a great picture that I'll show you sometime of one of our people, one of our volunteer skirters who had earphones on to keep the noise down, and she had a leaf blower and was blowing the dirt and the short bits out of the fleece. So there are a lot of ways to do it, but you can't send it to the mill with all that stuff in it because it'll either clog up the works or it'll make crummy yarn with lumps. So I have a couple of questions about flax that came earlier that I want to ask Jess and Sarah. And while you're answering, that'll give me a chance to go back through the rest. Someone wanted to know if flax can be grown in the backyard and also what you're doing with your flax.
Yeah, so flax can absolutely be grown in your backyard. In fact, as I mentioned, the third and fourth iterations of the project that we're doing, that decentralized community grow, that is what that is. It's all backyard growers.
Front yard,
yeah.
Or community
all
gardens.
Community grows. So you can certainly grow it in your backyard. You might need, it depends on what you're intending to make with it. And, if you have all of the processing equipment to be able to utilize it, spin it into linen, into a usable fiber. But yes, certainly you can grow it in your backyard. It grows best at the 48th parallel, actually, so more northern parts of the United States. Certainly anyone can give it a shot and grow it, even if you're not that northern.
You want to start it in colder weather.
Yeah.
We seed here at the beginning of May. And we get one crop out of it. I know that Chico flax and some other folks get more than one crop per year, depending on your climate. But yeah, that's how we do it. We tarp it, so no till. We use, like Jess talked about, different varieties of seeds. But as long as you seed it close together, you don't really have to, and you seed it early enough, it will outcompete the weeds. It's a really pretty crop. It flowers sometime in July for us here, and it's pretty resilient as well. Even deer can lay on it and whatnot. And it's pretty springy, so it'll bounce back up. And then to answer the question about what are we doing with the flax? Well, as I kind of said in the presentation, we were doing seed trials. So we were the third year, we were collecting the seed. We also have many other projects going on in our Rust Belt Fibershed, one of which is the 1 Year 1 Outfit project, where people within our fiber shed come together in different cohorts to create an outfit completely from our fiber shed. So a lot of our flax has been funneled into that usability for that project.
For artisans.
Yeah, for artisans. But as I also mentioned, there is no industry for processing nor for spinning local bast fiber or any bast fiber. So that includes hemp, nettle, milkweed, flax, all of the production facilities for that has since gone overseas. So all of the fiber sheds, all the affiliates kind of get together, and we have a bast fiber working group, and we work through this, and we're trying to, I'm currently on the North American Linen Association now that has just begun, and we are trying to come together with ways to bring industry back to the United States. But the fact is that there is no large scale processing for linen here. So all of it is done by hand. And while it can be fun to do a little bit by hand, it gets very tiresome. There are many steps in the process for it. It's not, I don't want to say, shearing sheep and cleaning the wool and carding it and all of that. But there's, I don't know, there are different machines that need to be utilized for processing bast fiber. And so it becomes very challenging to do that if you have to do all of the steps by hand. If you're curious about that, because you know a little bit about spinning, and why can't we just use the processing mills that process wool for bast fiber? It's because of the staple length of bast fiber. It's much longer, and so it will just basically gum up the works of any machine that processes animal fiber. So we can't use the same.
There are some blends that you can do with the short toe from flax. That is a much shorter staple length than blending it with linen with wool and alpaca fiber.
Yeah.
Some Flax Project is working on that, as well as some other fiber sheds are with mini mills. But
and just really quickly to speak again to the process that we're following that we shared with you all, which is respect and then connect. We're really trying to look at our assets in our area, and from a sustainability perspective, we like to think of sustainability as, if we keep the status quo just going as it is right now, it actually will lead to degradation. So we like to think of the next step, which is regeneration. So aside from just sustainability, we like to think of all of the projects that we do, and the philosophy that we have is regeneration. So how could we consider bringing in any industry, be that a mill, processing facility, maybe it's even just like regenerating through co-op experiences. So it's regeneration of energy among people, communities, land, all of that is a tick point for us for how we move forward with production of linen in the Rust Belt Fibershed. And we take that part very seriously, that respect and connect piece. And so that's kind of how we are thinking about moving forward with this.
Very good. Thank you for that really good, specific explanation. I think that this movement that we're all a part of is about trying to fix broken systems or reinvent systems that aren't necessarily working in the 21st century that need to be changed. I think we've all found a lot of interest among fiber artists and among farmers for being part of it, but when you have big pieces that are missing, like not having a textile mill that can process linen, or not having one that can process your yarn in less than a year, then that causes a huge problem. I mean, I got into this Blue Ridge Blankets project expecting that we would start around the first of the year buying fleece and we would have blankets to sell by Christmas. And we was really, really shocked once we got ready to send it off to a mill to find out that it would be at least a year before they could even get to it. And then, of course, it has to be dyed and it has to be woven. And I said, wow, my 1-year project has turned into a 2-year project. And honestly, I don't know how farmers afford to do it, because you have to put all the inputs into the fiber, whether you're growing it in your field or whether you're growing it on an animal. And you have to pay to have it sheared, or you process it, and then you have to wait for a long time. So it's amazing to me sometimes that farmers are still raising fiber animals, because they're doing it for love. They're not doing it for money in most cases. Erin, you want to jump in on this conversation?
Yeah, sorry. I was just reading everybody's comments. Yeah, I mean, the cost of wool has definitely gone down. They're quoted like cents on the dollar for what they have. And then, I mean, just the time to get something back from a mill is, I mean, some of the stuff we've had in a mill for 6 months, we've been just waiting. It's just a stall pattern for us.
Right.
So it's just been really hard. Because, you know, we'll get some fleeces. Luckily, I'm friends with one of the mills, so sometimes I get pushed up a little bit. So I get to get in, I get to sneak in, but it's just a matter of trying to build it so we have a better system so people can get their stuff back faster, because more things would be made if there were less barriers and boundaries, you know, against doing it, I guess.
Right. I just noticed a comment in the chat that there's something called Taproot Fiber Lab in Nova Scotia that makes small scale flax processing equipment. Do you know about them?
Oh yeah, I was just typing in a response, so thank you for this. Yeah, we've actually been in pretty constant communication with Patricia from Taproot. She's also a member of the board that I'm on with NALA, and they have had some supply chain issues for getting their machinery ready to go. But it looks hopeful within the next year that they'll be able to get some of that small scale machinery out. And that would be the scale that we would be using for just more like proof of, you know, concept, because it is fairly small scale, but it is really exciting that there's at least something out there that is not a gigantic, you know, billion-dollar, you know, infrastructure that is needed to show people what, you know, local linen can look like. So yeah, as soon as Taproot gets those machines out, you know, we'll work with Patricia to get one in our fibers. It's very exciting.
And I think that's really one of the hallmarks of this whole sustainability movement, is to go toward more small scale, community-based equipment. You know, and back in the day when cotton was king, let's say, before it was all being shipped to China to be processed, you know, that you would go to one place to have it carded and another place to have it put into roving and another place to have it spun. But these were all huge equipments and very specialized. And I think now what we see working in the United States, and this has probably been true in rural areas around the world for a long time, are equipment and industrial solutions that are small scale, where you can take all your product to one location and get something back from them, hopefully in less than a year. That's sort of the state of things. Well, if any of you have any more questions, we might have time for one more. I do want to mention the organization called Fibershed that each one of your speakers today are a part of. It's an international organization that has about almost 50 individual fiber sheds as members. the mothership, as some of us like to call it, is based in California. Oh, Kelsey just put the website in the URL in the chat, fibershed.org, and you might check it out. There's lots of information about research that's been conducted. You can see if there's a Fibershed organization in your area. If you found any of this in discussion compelling, something you'd like to get involved with, you can find a group to connect with, or you can gather up some of your fiber friends and start your own Fibershed organization. So low bar to entry, right? All you have to do is say you want to do this and take a project on. Like, I love it that you're shearing, Erin. We need more shearers all across the United States. So I think that's fabulous.
Absolutely. I'm finding we have more people who heard about us from somebody else, and then we'll get an email and go, I have not been able to get anyone to come out here for less than like 20 sheep. And we're like, well, that's what we're here for. We do small herds and we help the small farmers. So it's been great. And we haven't even been at it for a year yet. So it will just keep getting better and better as we go. It's been really wonderful.
All right. Well, on behalf of all of your speakers and Warp today, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to especially thank all of you that made great suggestions, because we've had more activity in the chat, I think, today than we've ever had, Kelsey. There's a lot of good ideas were presented and a lot of good suggestions shared. So I appreciate y'all for doing that. What do we have on tap for our panel next month?
So next month, we will have the team from an organization called Around the World in 80 Fabrics. And they're going to be speaking specifically about their organization. And they're working on a project to create a sort of catalog of different fiber types and different textile techniques from all around the world. And they're very related to our topic today because they also have a focus on sustainability and preservation of traditional materials and techniques.
Wonderful. Okay, I can't wait for that one. I hope I'll see some of you there, or here, I guess I should say. See you here next month, and enjoy your fall. Well, bye for now.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you, Jess, Sarah, and Erin for being with us today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all.